Hello and welcome to Onesies, the podcast of one season wonders and wonders. My name's Andrew.
And my name is Emily.
And we are on our final episode of Morton Hayes, episode 6. We will be continuing this season with Police Squad next week, but this is it.
This is it. Fuck
Christopher Guest, Rob Reiner, Michael McKean, not Harry Shearer, 1991 sitcom. Okay. Do you have 3 things that you would like to?
I've got a lot of things. I'm trying not to steal things that we were talking about earlier via text. I want to talk about, this is in no particular order. I want to talk about improv. I want to talk about wordplay. And I want to refer to to similar gags done much better by Rick Mayall and friends.
Okay, so let's see. I guess I will do Shakespearean actresses to get us started. Cat. And I don't know why I have dress with class, but I don't remember. So
I remember that one. If you want to talk about it, I can fill you in.
We'll do that one.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So this episode starts, as all episodes start, with Meathead Reiner introducing the episode. And this one is an episode where the boys are married and their frequent collaborators, their frequent wives, are back from an earlier episode played by Allison Janney and Maria Parkinson.
That's where I had heard Maria Parkinson before. Last week I was like, I've heard that name. Oh yeah, 2 episodes ago, dum-dum.
The joke is that these are Shakespearean actresses playing nagging wives in shitty comedy shorts. I am sure that 1940 Shakespearean actresses are probably, I don't know. I don't know how we'll do that. I'm not going to do the history of it, but I bet there's probably some anachronisms at the best. But anyway, so the episode, what was it? No Good Bums?
Good
the title.
Home Buddies.
Then why do I have No Good Bums written down? Oh, is that
because she calls them? Yeah, they call them that. Yeah.
So I just have to say, you women really, really come off looking good this episode.
Yeah. Well, I made the decision pre-pod that I wasn't going to call you a cuck for loving your wife, since you're having kind of a rough day. So nice setup, but
aren't you sweet? Yes. So the episode, or the short, starts with the boys wearing aprons and doing women's work while their wives make fun of them. And
there's a bunch of wordplay here too, where they're packing the women's suitcases. They're going to visit their mothers, and something like, "Oh, it sure is hard to shut up these old bags, right?" And really, they're trying to close the suitcases, but because women are terrible, and being tied down to one is even worse, the women misinterpret those thoughts or that to mean that they're trying to shut the women up, calling them old bags. Get it?
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So then they're standing at the door and we're doing a series of nagging things from the wives and the boys saying, "Yes, dear."
Yeah.
And then at one point, one of the guys says, "Yes, dear," to the wrong wife.
Mm-hmm.
Who takes offense and says, "Why are you putting up with your friend flirting with your best friend's wife?" And then the wives want them to fight. So there's some
not the funniest part, because I mean there's very little that's actually funny in this, but Chick smacks Eddie, and then Eddie's wife says, "What are you just going to stand there like an oaf and take it?" And Eddie turns to smack Chick. And Chick just gives him a look, and instead he just face palms him. I thought that was kind of cute. He just puts his hand on his face.
Yeah.
But
it would have been nice if Chick hadn't smacked Eddie, though. Then, yeah. But then the wives leave. The boys look at each other and say, "We're free," and get get ready to head out to the racetrack. But wait, their wives aren't really gone. They're waiting outside the front door. They're outside the window.
They're answering the phone at the bookies.
Yeah. So that's funny, I guess.
Well, women are omnipotent. So
yes, trying to stop the unemployed husbands from going to the track. So then Chick resigns himself to this and puts Eddie to work vacuuming while Chick takes a bath.
First ironing. He's ironing first.
That's right. The ironing board actually comes into it at one point.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you're yawning just thinking about it.
Oh, wow. We've got the turkey bit coming up.
God. So Eddie is ironing clothes and he leaves the iron on a shirt. And whoa, there's a big hole, iron-shaped hole in the burnt through the shirt. He hangs it up anyway. And another almost funny bit was that there's all these shirts hung up, and Chick is trying to get Eddie's attention for some reason, and he looks through, and there's a hole in the same place in every shirt. So he's kind of looking through a tunnel of iron-shaped holes at Eddie, telling him to vacuum. And the vacuum bit, Eddie trips on the vacuum and it starts running, but it also starts sucking up these very thick curtains. So it starts traveling up the wall, sucking up the curtains. That is done similarly in an episode of The Young Ones, starring Rick Mayall, and much better. So there's my first gags that have been done much better. And in The Young Ones, it was done before the production of the Morton Hayes TV show. It was 82 or 84. I forget which year. I forget which season it's on. But it's much better, but done by Ade Edmondson. So there's more of that. So I have recommendations for other TV shows to watch again.
But then we get to the radio thing. So Eddie's got to cook the radio or cook the turkey. And he's like, how do I do it? I don't know how to cook a turkey, Chick. And Chick's like, listen to the radio. Do everything the radio cook lady says. Except then Chick starts fighting with a bee in his bath and hits the radio, changing the station.
So coincidentally, there's a radio show program about learning how to cook a turkey that happens to be going on at the same time. And Eddie's going through the steps. And yes, Chick is fighting with the radio to kill the bee or whatever, and it switches station. So he ends up doing a lot of goofy stuff to the turkey, including talking to it and dancing around with it, twirling it. I don't know, a bunch of weird stuff, but it doesn't matter because it goes away eventually.
Yep, a cat shows up,
right,
and grabs the turkey. And when the cat grabs the turkey, it's on its head, and it's like a animatronic or puppet or something.
It's a puppet, I think. Yeah.
But then that's basically it for the turkey.
And all of the chores.
Yes.
All of the chores that the wives left for them to do. They've decided they've done them. It's over, and they're going to go out and have some fun. But first, because Chick told Eddie to listen to the radio exactly, when there's a quiz on the radio, Eddie gets the call for the random quiz and takes the quiz. There's a lengthy, unfunny bit about him trying to find the phone. Yes, he's crawling on the ground following the phone cord, and it ends up being on the floor under a pile of laundry, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And he might hit his head on the ironing board.
Yep.
But then they trip their way into winning the quiz.
So again, through a lot of weird wordplay. The only one I can remember, because I wrote it down, was the question was something like which U.S. city recorded the lowest temperature, and the whole larger bit is that Chick is asking him questions and he's answering the questions, but inadvertently his answer sounds like the correct answer to the quiz. So something about the Haymarket riot, and he says, and Chick asks him like, hey, if you want to chat on the phone all day, that's fine if you don't want to come with me. And he goes, hey, chick, I'll go. And it sounds like Chicago. And he gets the question right. Woo, hilarious. But the one I have written down is the coldest recorded temperature in the United States. Something about asking his wife something. And he says, I don't know, chick, Alaska. Like asking his wife the answer to a thing. And that's a little bit racist. The sort of pronouncing native Alaskan or First Nations place names. Funny.
Great. There's also a New Delhi joke.
Oh, a New Delhi joke. That's right.
Because they're going to go try a New Delhi.
Yeah.
So he wins the grand prize, which will be delivered to him at his home. At that point, a bank robber throws a bag of money in their window.
Mm-hmm. A bag of money with the dollar signs on it, so you know what it is.
It's just how they did it back in the day. What are you talking about?
I know.
They did it like a shitty 60s cartoon. Throws the money in the window and they're like, hey, this is our prize. We're rich. And so
very quick cut to them in robes. This is them dressed fancy, right? They're in dressing gowns. They have a concierge or a butler of some kind and the beautiful, sexy French maid.
So the butler is played by Ray Burke, who was in, I believe, the first or second episode.
Yeah.
And then the maid is played by Fabiana Udenio, who was in Summer School, which I guess Emily hasn't seen.
I have not.
That's too bad. She was also in the first Austin Powers, it looks like.
Oh. I've seen that.
There you go. You've seen her in something else. So she doesn't have any, if she has any lines, it's a line. It's
maybe 2 lines, yeah. And she does a French accent, and because Chick says, oh, I love it when they speak European. Ugh.
Yep. So cool. There's a weird connection through Rob Reiner because Carl Reiner, his dad, directed Summer School.
Oh.
So there you go. Okay, so then let's see here. The landlord comes by and says, you haven't paid your rent. And they're like, we just won this big prize. But then there's a knock at the door and they get their actual prize, which is a big basket of Jawbreakers. And so now the landlord thinks something's up.
Yeah.
And then...
But he still takes the money.
He still takes the money. And so their back rent is paid. I think that must be Bradley Mott. So then the crook comes back.
Yeah, the crook comes back to get his prize. He somehow remembers exactly which window he threw the money into.
Yep.
And he comes back to reclaim it. And this, he says, you've got something on ice for me. This is to clear up your note about dressing as fancy as us or whatever. And Eddie, being the dumb one, thinks he's the chef and says, you can't be dressed like that if you're a chef for Morton Hayes. You have to be dressed fancy like us. He says, you look like you just broke out of prison, when in fact he had just broke out of prison and then immediately robbed a bank. I don't know.
So
we're really excited about this one.
This is kind of like the most boring bad it could have been.
Yeah. So again, I was reminded in the scene, kind of, not necessarily with the crook, but there's an episode of The Young Ones again where they're broke and some fancy furniture truck backs into their house and suddenly they're living the high life. It's sort of this weird surreal thing. And they're living the high life. And I think Rick Mayall he's got a big poofy, like bouffant hair, like almost like a old timey aristocrat. And then he's got these 2 braids in the back down his neck, like Padawan braids. It's hilarious. But he's wearing like a rich silk robe and suddenly they're putting on airs. It's really goofy. It's much, much, much better than this. And it's very funny. So I recommend watching that episode. Just watch The Young Ones. It's only 2 or 3 seasons. 2, 3.
But then the wives show up and they kick the robber's ass because he doesn't know how to deal with mean women. And then the cops come, and there's a whole bit about the stolen money going back and how they're short. But and it's the suits. So they bought suits. So now Chick and Eddie are in their underwear. And the landlord bought himself a new suit, so they tear the suit off of him.
He tears a suit. Yeah. He's got a tearaway suit on, which I thought was great. I love a tearaway.
And then for the reward, it's just enough to cover their rent until next week.
Yeah.
And Chick and Eddie look at each other and say, well, things can't possibly get worse. But then their wives tell them their mothers are moving in, and they pass out or something.
Yeah, they fall to the ground and then a puff of smoke comes up.
Yep. So,
and our reward for making it through this terrible thing is that there's a continuation of the interview between Rob Reiner and Chick and Eddie.
Very obviously filmed at the same time as last episodes.
Mm-hmm. And to me, and I am not going to rewatch the first half of this interview, but to me, this half seemed very improv-y. I don't know if Rob Reiner and Kevin Pollak had any formal improv training. It didn't seem like it, but it seems very much like I'm going to throw this premise out and you're going to yes and it repeatedly. There's this weird bit about how Chick wanted to keep going, and it reminded me of Chico Marx. You know, they just kept making those terrible movies because Chico was in debt. Gambling debts. And they make kind of a funny reference, and I don't know if this was improv or if this was something that had been written, where he gets another Morton Hayes, but it's Helen Hayes, the first female EGOT, and she doesn't like it, so it doesn't last very long because she wants to be on the stage in the theater. The one good thing I can say about this episode, and you had mentioned it before, but it mimicked my sort of thinking on the matter, is that Bob Amarel's fucking great.
Yep.
He had a lot to do this episode, and it was not a lot of talking, although there was some. And he had some funny lines like, I'm not playing dumb, because he is dumb, right? But a lot of facial expressions, a lot of really good stuff happened. He was really good.
He was really good, and he's really good in the makeup, whereas Kevin Pollak is not.
Yeah.
It also in the interview section, one of their lost shorts, Sheeps, is actually the origin of a joke that went on to become popular, but it only did $19 in the theater or something, they say.
Yeah.
And then the final joke is that as the end credits play, Eddie, Kevin Pollak, asks Rob Reiner when they're going to get paid, because presumably they're going to have to get paid for this. So yeah,
that's it. We finished it.
We finished it. There were a lot of other things that reminded me of the young ones. Again, the similar bits done in a better way. They used like the sugar glass bottles in this episode, and they used a lot of sugar glass and like prop chairs that were built to break in the young ones. I recommend that. It's much funnier, a little more anarchic and better, and a little bit better. So Michael McKean directed this episode, not Christopher Guest. I'm not impressed with Michael McKean's direction. It's not quite as bad as Christopher Guest, but it's also less enthusiastic than Christopher Guest. It's kind of weird.
Also, this is like a bottle episode. They never leave their apartment.
Yeah, that's true. They ran out of money or something.
Also, I think I remember seeing, was it in Abbott and Costello, where they have wives and they don't like live in the same house, but they live in like right next door to each other. So it was weird that they were all living in the same house. Yeah,
that was not explained. It's some of the misogyny seems like a Honeymooners riff. I haven't seen Honeymooners since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if the deep down secret is that Ralph really respects his wife. I hope so. I'm not going to go back and find out. That's technically only one season too. It's just 39 episodes. But yeah, this is like some shitty sitcom riff. Like it's pretty bad, and it's like it's I don't know. Why the hell are we talking at length about Morton and Hayes?
Okay, we can be done.
We can talk about Police Squad.
Yeah. So next time we're moving on to Police Squad, and it's going to have a lot of content, I think, because it's not very politically correct. I haven't seen it in a while, but I watched the first episode before we decided to do this as a podcast. I watched the first episode of it. It's pretty funny, but it's, man, oh man, it's going to be racist, homophobic.
I was going to guess on the homophobic. I wasn't going to guess on the racist yet, but 1983 or 4?
One, I think.
Early 1980s is mainstream TV was as homophobic as a 2010 Paul Rudd movie, which is a lot, 1982.
Too.
So interestingly enough, that is also around the time of the first season of Cheers, which has an episode about the boys at the bar being worked up about gay guys, and Diane, the waitress, being like, you need to chill the fuck out. Those are your friends. They're gay and there's nothing wrong with them. And so it has a very like progressive message for 1982.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So Police Squad, looking forward to that.
Yes, I am too.
It'll be nice to see some of these jokes in their original context. Well, I mean, all your young ones comparisons, I'm just like, is that what Christopher Guest watched in the 80s and was like, let's just borrow these bits?
I mean, there's a lot.
You got a lot.
But there's not like, I mean, most of these are like tropey though.
Yeah.
Most of these are just tropes, and they just did it in a much better way. It was just executed much better by Rick Mayall and his team of goofs. Team.
I mean, that is, Morton and Hayes is not a team, right? Like it's not a group. It's not a troupe, as it were. Yes, it's 3/4 of the Spinal Tap guys, but so fucking what? Like,
yeah. I mean, they didn't have this. Well, and the Young Ones was written by Rick and 2 other people. The guys that he was working with who were acting in the episode were, well, it was supposed to be 2 double acts, but it was Rick and Aid who were a double act initially, and then Chris Ryan and Nigel Planter, who Nigel was part of a double act, but his partner dropped out for some reason at the last minute, and so they replaced him with Chris Ryan, who's not a comedic actor at all, and he plays it completely straight, and it's insanely ridiculous. But because they had, especially Rick and Aid, had this double act sort of thing going that had been built on, and they were best friends and all this stuff, and they had been working together for years, it worked much better. This looks like 2 actors who had never met thrown together to play a double act. I mean, they didn't have that chemistry or that rapport at all. And the fact that Bob Amarel was so much better than Kevin Pollak made it tough.
Yeah. I mean, especially since we went into this thinking at least Kevin Pollak was going to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there aren't really a lot of double acts like that in American mainstream stuff. Like, at the very best, you get a cameo or whatever, Matt Damon cameoing in Ben Affleck's Jack Ryan movie only gets cut, or you had the 2 of them in some of the Kevin Smith movies, but that only lasted until Fame. And then you could only do the Mel Gibson, Danny Glover thing. I mean, you can't do it anymore.
Hopefully Danny wouldn't.
Hopefully, however, he did do a redeeming premiere, like the last issue of Premiere Magazine had the 2 of them together talking about a Lethal Weapon 5 or something. But like in Maverick, it was adorable, right?
Yeah.
Like before we knew Mel Gibson was a piece of shit. When he was still an American treasure, which would be a piece of shit, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just like there's no rapport. They clearly didn't test them. Like one of the things that I've noticed about television in the last 5 or 6 or even more now years is that you'll get to about the 6th episode of a season and you'll see a really great scene between a couple of the actors. And you can tell that this is the one they tested them on.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't watch it, but there is very clearly in the first season of CW's The Flash, a scene between Grant Gustin and, oh God, who plays his dad? Oh, Jesse L. Martin.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, where they have a scene together and it's like this wonderful father-son scene.
I have a question. Is it complex and dramatic?
It is complex and dramatic.
See, and I think I was watching something else, which we will not mention on the podcast because we'll bring it down. I was watching something else and I was like, God, these actors are so good. But it's a drama that I'm watching. So everybody's dramatic. And I was like, these actors are so good. Why aren't there the equivalent kind of complex comedy scenes that are funny? I mean, that are memorable. I can't think of any like really, really legitimately funny, not just like rom-com, not to shit on rom-coms, but like, I don't know, like I can't think of any like really complex, great comedy scenes in the last 50 years.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you could watch some Buster Keaton, you could watch some Marx Brothers, you could watch some Tati.
Yes.
I think you can blame it on the 70s or something. Okay. I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's just weird. It's just weird because I was thinking like I love Niecy Nash and she's hilarious and she's great and she's wonderful. And in this show, she plays very dramatic and it's fucking great. And it's like, I can't believe I have to watch the shit that makes me sick just to watch a good Niecy Nash performance. Like, I mean, she's really funny in other things that I've seen her in her comedies, but I'm watching the Dahmer. It's the Dahmer show. And she's fucking great. I had no idea that she could perform. And I was thinking, why is it that drama brings this out in people, but comedy can't? It's because comedy isn't the same anymore.
It's because comedy isn't the same anymore. Yeah. You don't have comedy directors like that, right? Because once you got sort of the Ivan Reitman, Bill Murray, Harold Ramis mold starting in 1980, 1979, even with Meatballs, it really just never changed, right? Like it's always just looking for the next punchline from a Bill Murray type. I would say, and you will disagree, that the first 3 Wes Andersons have things like that, but they're not. They're not huge comedy set pieces.
No.
They're soulful, lighter things.
I love me some Wes Anderson. So you've misread me.
I would say that I love me some early Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
I would say actually, and I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen seasons 4 or 5. Arrested Development would have been the closest thing.
Yeah, I liked that show at first.
Yeah. So they would do it, but it's like, it's hard, man. Like, because I don't know, like Parenthood. Parenthood was a comedy drama, not the show, the movie. Right. 89, big sleeper hit. The Rob Reiner comedy drama, Parenthood, The Paper, things like that. Maybe your Steve Martin. Because no, actually, it's because it's Saturday Night Live did it.
Yeah.
You instead have Steve Martin doing a bit in the middle of Father of the Bride.
Yeah.
And then it's over. He's tearing open the things and he's ranting and it's funny. And then it's over. It's not something that they laid for 10 minutes. And also the pacing would do that too. Marx Brothers were stage adaptations, right? Same thing with Tati to some degree, is he does not have a long present action for his movies. Playtime takes place over 16 hours or something, right?
Yeah.
So like you have the buildup as they're experiencing these events, not concurrently, consecutively.
Mm-hmm.
And so
there's buildup and there's tension,
right?
And things can kind of mount and come to a head.
So for this show, what we actually should have been getting was punchlines at the very end that called back to something in the first act, and we never got any of those because even the one episode that I think we would say we enjoyed, which is the Penelope Ann Miller one, they just threw new comedic things in at the end, which happens in old comedies, but it does not in good ones. Right. Like and it happens more, I would say, even in old 7-minute cartoons, right? Like you bring in something in the last 2 minutes to, give yourself something to do. And it's just, there's just no buildup for it. It's a bummer. It's, I think now that I've said it's SNL, it's
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
It's just, you just have a bit that you figure out how to translate to screen and fit into this wider narrative.
Yeah.
And then you're done with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
So there we go.
Well, good analysis.
There we go. That's what Morton Hayes does to you. It makes you want to watch good comedies. So yeah. Am I watching any sitcoms now? I don't know. We haven't started watching Abbott season 2 yet, but
we're watching Kath and Kim.
Okay.
It's really good. We're watching it in order, including the movies. It's weird.
You're making your husband watch it, aren't you?
No, he loves it. He likes it just as much as I do.
That's exactly what Morton and Hayes' wives would say.
But women aren't funny, so we're just pretending so we can, be woke.
Is Jerry Lewis dead finally? Anyway.
Yeah, he's dead. Oh yeah. We were actually just talking about The Day the Clown Cried. And we're like, if they show that at like the Directors Guild, there's going to be 3 lines around the block. Like,
it's going to be wild.
It's going to be wild. I will keep you posted. You are going to
be cavity searced when you go in there. You are going to be cavity searched.
Ooh.
Last anecdote, just as a heads up, are they actually talking about doing it, or
no? We were just talking about. I found a really cool rainbow suit online, and I'm like, Jason, is this too much for a job interview? He's like, it's too much for the premiere of The Day the Clown Cried. And I was like, oh fuck.
Many years ago, before it came out on Criterion DVD and Blu-ray, Northwestern University had a projectors club, part of the film department.
Yeah.
And they showed movies. And one of the movies they showed was White Dog, the Sam Fuller that was illicit. And I went up to some college kid, and I was not much older than a college kid at the time, but I went up to the college kid. I was like, hey, have you guys thought about, like, I don't know, maybe making a print of this and burning it to DVD?
Yeah.
And the guy just like stared at me, and I was like, what? Like, I would have been thinking about it. Like, come on, right? Like,
there's a couple of those Song of the South going around, huh?
Song of the South. What else? I can't. If you're still listening to this, it means Emily thinks a lot of our banter. I saw on Twitter some repertory theater had gotten a copy of Larry Cohen's what's that one called? The Stuff. And it's about a diet food that eats people.
Yes, I've heard of this. Okay.
And it's incredibly short, and it seems like a bunch of the movie's missing, and some guy at a old theater rented it to show and was like, yeah, this has got 20 extra minutes. And people are like, you gotta get that to somebody to the 20
that's so cool.
missing minutes that would make the movie make sense.
That's so cool. Fun.
This has nothing to do with Morton Hayes, but I do.
No, but it's a much more interesting conversation.
Yes, it is. And the stuff is probably better time spent than Morton and Hayes. So,
all right,
everybody.
I'll thank Jason for recommending it. All right, thank you for listening, everybody. See you next time when we'll be talking about episode 1 of Police Squad. I almost said Airplane. Police Squad, starring Leslie Nielsen. And I think special guest star is somebody cool too. But we'll talk about that next time. Bye.
Bye.